Hey everyone. So I'm going to take us through a mannerism table that I worked on. I had some questions about what the mannerisms are, what they're doing, how you can flesh them out a little bit. So I'm going to try to flesh them out a bit more. So I made this table, but before I go there, I had another question that I want to answer. So is awareness the white square in the center? Um, so here, let's try to answer what's actually going on in the center. So something's going on in the center here. Um, you can see right here, there's something going on. What is it? All four functions are overlapping. What's going on? So what I relate it to is a little bit like a tesseract. Okay, so you see in the center of the tesseract, it's always hollow. You can shoot an arrow through it and constantly. Right? And so that's kind of what's happening here. So this is the same diagram as before. You got the white center and you've got the white on the outside. So if you were to go on a lower level of complexity, so push more into the center, you'll see that there's another layer that pops out. I don't know what this layer is, but just showing this is a lower level complexity. And then if we go on a higher level complexity, it's the outer layer that disappears and you get more on the inside. So objective personality is dealing more with higher level of cognitive complexity. So this is objective personality 101 sort of thing. Like you've got DI, DE, OE, OI, and then you've got the animals, and then you've got the double observing. Why is it double observing? Because you've got one function balancing two other functions, and this is where they all intersect, right? And so this is kind of what objective personality is. You go in one more layer, you get here, you get rid of the functions themselves. All you have are the animals, and you get like the skibs, the mopes, right? You get the double activated. So like this is the blast last, which makes it energy dom, right? You've got play and sleep and consume all together, balanced. So that's energy dom, right? And so that's kind of what happens as cognitive complexity goes up. So what we're interested is this level down here, this level here of our cognitive complexity. This is where the mannerisms pop out. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So I have the mannerisms here organized based on quadra again. So alpha quadra mannerisms are here. So let's just start with alpha quadra. Let's just go through consume. I'm not going to do all of them. Maybe I'll just do one animal from each quadra just to give an example of how you can read this table and look at it yourself. So we have the umbrella is intellectual and internalizing. This is what's overlapping, by the way. So if you look here, you have got intellectual and you've got internalizing. And when they both overlap, you get the mannerism of analyzing, right? That's the mannerism. But what we're actually looking to do is see, okay, you've got this. What's going on here? What's the actual animal doing, right? So the animal is going to have some portion of analyzing, right? And it's going to have associative and exacting, right? It's going to balance those two, right? That's one of them. And so right here, you see it's going to be this middle one here, associative and exacting, right? So you'll see on the other side too, on the blast, it's also balancing those two, right? But it's going to have, since the mannerisms aren't unique to this quadra. This is just because, right, this is internalizing and intellectual. Here you also have TI is also internalizing. It's also intellectual, and it also exists here. So TI will also have this mannerism. It just won't have a shared partner for that mannerism, right? And so what the table is doing is it's showing all of the different mannerisms and how they converge together on analyzing, right? So, or on whatever one they are, so, whatever animal we're talking about. So we'll start with analyzing. It's intellectual and internalizing overlapped. And you'll see, obviously, there's a perception function and a deciding function. So that's one difference you can make. Another difference is, okay, one is implicit, the other one's explicit, right? NE is implicit, TI is explicit. One is extroverted and the other one's introverted, right? Whereas like here you have experiential, introverted and explicit, right? You see that it's the experiential and the intellectual that is the dichotomy here, not implicit, explicit. And it's externalizing and internalizing that's the dichotomy here, right? So these stay the same throughout all of analyzing, but these are the differences. So one of the functions is implicit and explicit. So analyzing is merging implicit and explicit. And what this is here, it's the double approach. This is the approach. Implicit analyzing is uncovering, and explicit analyzing is examining, right? So you're balancing uncovering and examining together under the umbrella of analyzing. So analyzing, the implicit analyzing is uncovering, and explicit analyzing is examining. Okay, we already talked about associative and exacting. This is going to be both of them. So implicit extroverted is associative, and explicit introverted is exacting, right? And merging those two together under analyzing. So associative and exacting are two things that the animal is going to merge together. And then here as well, consensus and truth. So consensus is going to be, this time it's going to stay intellectual, right? It's an NT. They're both NT, but one of them is extroverted NT and the other one is introverted NT, right? So it's merging consensus and truth. That's what it's doing. And if you want to see something interesting about how to wrap your head around this as well, let's take this one, for example, uncovering and examining. So you look at the opposite quadra, which is gamma quadra. And here, since it's consume, it's going to also be in consume. So gamma quadra is also doing uncovering and examining in the consume, right? Let's see. Examining and uncovering, right? But this one is experiential, right? That's the difference. So this is an experiential consume, which is also but it's examining and uncovering under an acquisition, under the acquisition umbrella, right? And so that's an interesting way to look at the difference in mannerisms as well. So here we've got associative and exacting. And since it's from the same quadrant, it's going to be right here below it under. So one of them is consume. This is going to be the blast, right? It's going to be the directing. So here we have exacting and associative for the purpose of catering, right? You're exacting SI and you're associating FE and you're using that to cater. You're catering an exact and you're catering some kind of association. So that's what catering is. And here it's on the seek, and then here it's on the play and the sleep, right? That's the division here. The introverted versus the extroverted, right? Introverted, extroverted, and yeah. So this is also play and sleep, and these are both consumes, right? So that's the consume and this is the consume. So the other place this shows up, we talked about, it'll be in the gamma as well. Consensus and truth is right here, right? So it's still NT, but this one is extroverted. Sorry, this one is blasting, directing. So, and the other one is consuming. So it's going to be trying to explain truth and consensus. Truth and consensus is going to come into its explanations. And this is going to try to internalize, right? Consensus and truth. So one's externalizing consensus and truth, the other one's internalizing. Okay, so let's go quick to beta. Let's also take an NT sleep, for example. So implicit and explicit is the first one, is externalizing, is essential and exacting, right? So there's an essential truth and an exacting truth, and it's trying to balance the essential truth and the exact truth. Now, this is something that I feel like I'm doing all day long. These ones are a little bit more strange for me, but this is one that comes from the approaches. So a quick thing about approaches versus orientations. So the needs here. So the orientation, the human needs come from here, and the animals come from here, right? So this is your animal order. So this is the pure animal in terms of a need, right? So it's like in terms of justification, It's an ends. And this is the means. This is the means. And this is the approaches. So the approaches don't seem to follow your animal stack. And this is something that I'm seeing here as well, is it's just more following your grant stack. So this is something that I'm doing constantly. The essential, exacting the essential. This is like all of these tables. Basically, my whole YouTube channel is just doing this, right? But this is not sleep, right? This is not the need of sleep. This is just a capability that is able to fill that need, right? And this is the entire row down is this capability. Here is the need, right? Here is the orientation. This is the need of sleep, right? And so explaining and analyzing is something that it doesn't make sense to me. Why would you match an explanation and your analysis? Why would you try to make those two the same? This is something that I'm doing on the other end on the infodom, but it's very hard to communicate because I'm not trying to make what I'm analyzing have an explanation. I'm not doing that on the front end, right? I'm not doing that in terms of sleep, and I'm not doing this either. I'm not uniting and examining truth. I'm not uniting truth. I don't care if truth is unified, and I'm not trying to examine truth. Well, I am examining truth, but I'm not trying to make examining truth and uniting truth match. And this is also why I think I have struggles communicating, for example. So just keep an eye for that. That if you have an animal last, it doesn't necessarily mean that this column is going to feel like you're not doing it. It'll feel like these ones are kind of foreign to you, maybe. Okay. The other place that you see, did we look at delta? So essential and exacting, you see in delta as well, they're doing essential and exacting, but here it's going to be experiential, right? It's going to be explicit exacting versus, explicit preference versus implicit preference, right? And here it's explicit truth versus implicit truth, yeah. And then here too, here is explaining and analyzing, which is really cool. In the deltas, they've got the analyzing and explaining is in their play, yeah. So in their play, they're merging their explanations and analyses in their play under the consensus. So this is what is consensus kind of doing in play? It's analyzing and explaining, and to find consensus. Okay, so let's go on to here. This is a good one. This is in Gamma Quadra. So the SETEs, right? So you'll see that these are both plays, circumstance and consensus. So there's an experience and there's an intellectual side to SETE. So the experience side is just looking at the circumstances, and then and it's looking at the consensus of those circumstances. So it's going back and forth between the intellectual and the experiential, the consensus and the circumstances. It's looking to merge as well acquisition and explanation back and forth, and then examining and implementing, which is kind of powerful as well. So it's empirical examinations and empirical implementations, and looking at the two, and like that's where you really see the spectrum come out. It has empirical examination, so it's it's examining the world, and it's looking at the implementations, and it's seeing how that matches up, the empirical side of implementing and examining, and that's where like the SETE is really good at seeing if things work, right? So here, let's just look at alpha. So circumstances and consensus. Alpha is also going to have those circumstances and consensus, right? But here it's going to be implicit, not explicit. So implicit consensus and implicit circumstances, right? Not explicit, so it's going to be associations and not empirical, yeah. But again, it's the same one. It's play. This is also play. What else? This one, you're going to see that it's here. This is the sleep is also doing the explanation and the acquisition, but it's essential. It's the essential it's the essence of the explanation and the essence of what you've acquired, and making those two go together. That's the sleep. Whereas this is the empirical side. And then here as well, this is also going to show up in the alphas, examining and implementing. You see here, you got examining and implementing. So it's also ST, but it's introverted. So it's sleep. So it's implementing and examining in exact implementations and exact examinations, and that's what their sleep is going to be doing. Okay. Last one, delta. We did sleep. We did play. We did blast. Yeah, this is a strong one too. So their blast is going to be implementation, but you have to cater that implementation, and you have to and you're explaining that implementation. So you explaining and catering it, catering your explanations, making those two mix together. You see a very powerful animal here for the deltas, catering a specific explanation, and yeah, great at directing people, getting everybody very explicitly on board. So same thing, you have preference and consensus. So there's a implicit consensus and preference, right? And this is the explicit preference and consensus. So a preference over something physical, explicit, provable, and then a consensus, a provable, explicit consensus. Whereas here, it's more looking at the implicit side of things in the seeking. Yeah. So this is going to be the blasting, right? So it's implementing, right? And then here is uncovering consensus and uncovering preference. And then exacting and empirical. The blast is also going to be very exact and very empirical. And it's going to merge the two as well, the exact and the empirical. And we can go up to alpha and beta. Exact and empirical is here. Oops. Over here. Here, exact and empirical. It's going to be on the consume, right? So very empirical examining and exact examining, right? And that's really what I feel I'm doing all day. That's my consume. And then here, it's going to be on the blast, exact and empirical blast, right? Implementation, exact implementation, and exact and empirical implementation, right? So yeah, just wanted to show you that's what the power of the mannerisms are. This is one of many tables, but this is a very useful one, I think. There's definitely more ways you can combine the mannerisms into behaviors. You'll notice that every NE, for example, has the 4 exact same mannerisms, right? Uncovering, analyzing, consensus, and associative. We can go to another NE somewhere here. Same thing, associative, consensus, analyzing, and uncovering. So it's the same exact mannerisms, just comparing, merging differently from the other NE. Anyways, that's it. Have a good one. And I'll start sharing more. This is just like a vlog. It's not going to be a very big home run hit or whatever. It's just sort of helping you guys get into what the mannerisms are and what they're doing. All right. Have a good one.